everybody, it's Renee again. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to make a super simple way to make sauerkraut in wide mouth mason jars. Because you already know that your girl hates food waste. So you start off with a head of cabbage. You can do this with multiple heads of cabbage, depending on how much sauerkraut you want. But you're just gonna cut it up. That's a lot of cabbage. And it is helpful to have a very sharp knife to cut up the cabbage head, because it makes it go by real quick. You will probably need a mixing bowl of some sort. Just because it makes it a lot less messy, because you're going to be cutting this up multiple times just to get it small enough to fit in the jars. Get the pieces small enough to fit in the jars. And to clean the jars, you can either bleach bath them like we did last time, in the last cleaning video that I did, or you can just use hot soapy water. This time it doesn't really matter too terribly much. So, this is all that's left of my cabbage head. I will put that in the compost heap to be taken out later. So you're going to need a little something to stomp the bruised leaves and stomp it down into the jars. And the reason why you need wide mouth jars is because it's easier to do that. It makes it easier to stomp it down. The small mouth jars for this application don't really work that well. And you do need mason jars because you're going to can it later in about 2 weeks. So, starting to make the leaves a little bit smaller and put them in the jars. So, when you pack the jars, again, you want to put as much product as possible, as much of this product as possible in the jars so that it's less likely to go bad. You will get a little bit of mold growth on the top layer. At least historically, that's what happened to me. Now, I'm just stamping it down, bruising the leaves, so I can get even more cabbage in there. And you're going to do that multiple times when you're filling the jars. I always find that sauerkraut is really easy and fun to make. And I've never actually done it in a crock before, which historically is what sauerkraut has always been made in. But you know what? Jars work for me. Now you're going to want to, when these jars are done being filled, and we'll put some boiling hot water in there. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but those lines are how big I'm keeping the pieces. You can shred it on a mandolin. That's just fine. This is just what's available to me. Stamping it down. To get even more cabbage. Yeah, one cabbage head goes a long way when you're doing this. I have 3 mason jars right in front of me, like quart-sized mason jars, and it will probably fill up the entirety of all of them, even with stamping it down. Stamping it down also reduces the amount of air bubbles left in the bottom of the jar. And air bubbles tend to leave space for mold to grow. And that's not good. That is not what you want when you're making sauerkraut. Sometimes I like to leave a bay leaf, put a bay leaf in each of the jars, simply because it tastes good. It surprisingly tastes good in sauerkraut. There isn't really much that bay leaf does not taste good in, so. Alright, so. This is what your jar should probably look like. There's probably a little bit too much in here, but that's okay. You can just transfer that to another jar. So, moving on to the next jar. Doing exactly the same thing. Cutting them up. Cutting up the cabbage head. And pulverizing the leaves. I've been doing a ton of canning this fall, simply because my fridge is very small and it reduces a lot of food waste. But I don't mind it. I think canning is fun. It lets me be creative in the kitchen, which is always a good thing. Oh, wait. Wrong implement. I do not want to use the bottom of my knife as a stomper. That would not end well. Alright, getting down to the bottom of the thing. So I have to watch salt intake, but when I make sauerkraut for dinner, or just cook it for whatever, because I love sauerkraut, my mom-in-law actually taught me this. I can actually soak it in cold water and put it in the fridge in a bowl, and by the power of osmosis, the salt leaches out. So I don't have to say goodbye to having sauerkraut. Which makes me happy. So, when you're done making all these jars, you have to set them out on the counter for about 2 weeks for them to ferment. Loosely covered, I use a plastic cover, plastic caps on those, just so that they can, like, you don't want them to go anaerobic, because that would be gross. That's another jar done. So moving on to the third jar, doing exactly the same thing. Sauerkraut is insanely easy to make this way. You don't get quite as much of a mat over top of it. And if you do get a little bit of moldy leaves on top above the water line, you can just pick them off before you can it. And if you get these little weird brown spots on the outer leaves, you can just chuck that in the compost bin, and then you're good to go. Cabbages have lots of layers. That's kind of what makes them wonderful. So. You will probably want a butter knife after we put the hot water in. And you just need to like boil some water. You need to boil water and because that's what kills all but the lactobacillus bacteria, which is what we want to help ferment the cabbage. And that's already in the cabbage. You don't need to add that. The only things that you need to add is salt. And you want to fill up these jars with boiling water up until about there. Just below this little lower line. This video is already 16 minutes long, so each jar gets about a tablespoon of salt and a bay leaf if you want it. And maybe a tiny bit of pepper, black pepper. And enough water to fill up to this line. You let it sit for 2 weeks, loosely covered. You burp them every day, just to like get the air bubbles out. And when you go to can it, you can it for 20 minutes in the water bath canner. And then you're good to go. And now you have sauerkraut. So, I hope you're doing well. And I will see you guys later. I hope you're doing great, and I love you very, very much. Have a good day.